Go ahead and call the June 5th, 2012 Utilities Committee meeting to order. At this time, we'll go ahead and do the invocation, followed by the pledge. If everyone please rise. Heavenly Father, we come before you tonight with the tall task ahead of us in dealing with utilities for this parish of Ascension. We ask for your blessing, your guidance in our agenda tonight, and looking forward to the information here to educate our public as to how do we need to proceed and come up with a plan to proceed forward with this situation that we're dealing with. Father, we also ask for your blessings and guidance to the Oliver Joseph family again tonight for their son who was involved in a car wreck this past weekend. Give them faith and the power to overcome this tremendous tragedy in their life and time. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Secretary, show Councilman Joseph absent, and Councilman Cluott is on the way. He should be here in the next few minutes. Public comment period. Anyone wishing to speak on any agenda item can have 3 minutes and come up and sign up with the Secretary, and we'll call when that item comes up on the agenda. Item number 4 is discussion of wastewater facilities plans for LDEQ. Mr. Ken Dawson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and to the Utility Committee. Just wanted to give you kind of an update of where we are with the facility plan. As you know, the facility plan was submitted to DEQ, even though the facility plan was not completed with the exception of the actual financial plan. It was submitted and it's being looked at. The other thing that's important is that the environmental impact document was also submitted to DEQ. What I'd like to do is just to kind of discuss basically a timeline that we talked with DEQ about as to how we're going to move forward with further submissions in order to secure the state revolving fund and finish off the facility plan. The goal is to around May is to review the alternate to this facility plan, which is what we're going through now, and then, Mr. Chairman, you'll be speaking to that, in a moment. We're looking at alternates. We're looking at what's the best possible plan. The goal was initially in May to submit the final facility plan to the Parish Utility Committee. In June, around June, to have the financial plan to full Parish Council, and then possibly July 15th actually go through to the State Bond Commission. Of course, those dates will slip, because we are still going through the process of initially getting the alternate passed. Once that's done, we will then come back to this committee and then try to set a new timeline to complete everything. The goal is now to actually schedule a meeting to continually engage DEQ on the process that we're utilizing to move forward, to make sure that they are connected with us and understand that our goal is to acquire those monies, because it's important for that SR, that state revolving fund, to be utilized to further our plans and to complete the overall goals of waste treatment in the parish. So that's kind of, if there's anyone that would like some more details of what this facility plan includes, Larry Shriver is here, and we'll discuss that if there's a need to.
Thank you. One thing I would like to go ahead and comment on at this time in discussions that I've had with the parish president as well as Mr. Dawson and other folks here. Tonight's meeting is discussion on all these different plans and things that we're looking at and trying to progress forward. We want to kind of take a step back and look at this from a new perspective, if you will, and we understand that DEQ has come into the parish and said we have an issue with our waste treatment streams. And so we want to quantify that. We want to give some information. We want to get that information and get it out to the public as well as ourselves to educate ourselves on exactly what the problems are within the parish. Once we do that, we can get into a problem-solving mode and decide what avenues we want to take with it. From there, so the discussions that we're going to have tonight are kind of generalizations. I know a lot of discussions have happened in the past in reference to pricing and all this other kind of stuff and the amount of money that's out there. For sure, this is a very expensive project, taking on sewer for the entire east side of the parish. It's a long-term project, and so what we want to make sure that we do is our due diligence and educate the public as well as ourselves, and that we get the best possible plan out there for the best price. And I think that's all of our goal and everything we want and what we need to work forward towards. So with that in mind, if anybody else has any comments on the facilities plan or questions of Mr. Dawson or anybody else now on that particular item, would be a good time.
I do, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Sadler?
Yeah, Mr. Schreiber, and if any of these questions don't make sense, I guess I'll start with apologizing for my ignorance of the matter, being not only I can't really say and use the excuse of new councilman, it's been almost 6 months, but it is the first time this committee has met, and I have you obviously, or had Mr. Dawson on the agenda, but he's offered now that you're here to answer questions.
Okay.
So welcome to the hot seat. A lot of people from the public have engaged me about this, and it was something that when I sought office personally had as a bullet statement on my push card and ran on. So I'm very intrigued by it and pleased that I've been placed on the Utilities Committee as a result. My understanding is we had to pass an ordinance, let's start with that, that would require citizens in the parish to hook up to a sewer system if we're to have a parish-wide one per se. And of course, that would engender the establishment of user fees. And correct me if I'm wrong, I believe this actually happened with the previous council, maybe back in August and September of 2011.
That's correct.
Is that correct? So we're past that stage, right?
Yes.
Now, there was some discussion about it, that the parish would need as a result something like 39,000 was a number I keep hearing. It's kind of a funny number to a person like me. Why not 40? Why not whatever? Uses to actually make that system workable financially. Would you comment on that? And is that real, or is it off base, or what about that?
Well, it depends on, I guess, which alternative, which approach would be taken. It would take several customers, probably roughly in that area, to retire the project from in total, but to get started, there are alternatives that don't require anywhere near that many customers. So
Okay,
it
so
depends on what.
you're talking more about, I understand depending on what the plan looks like, that's going to greatly affect the number, but you're saying that maybe we could have sort of a crawl, walk, run type strategy where we wouldn't need that number of customers in the beginning, but we could start getting something done. And I hate to use the word finally, we just all want, we don't
Yes.
need to beat that horse,
Right.
a sewer system that would address the whole parish. I have MoDad treated sewage in my house that goes in the front ditch, goes along Perkins Road, and then I assume it goes into the Bayou Man Shack, and that's, of course, unacceptable.
Right.
Certainly when I bog my tractors down and stuff in it constantly, but just unacceptable from a health standpoint. The issues that one day we may be actually mandated by the EPA to do something about it and so forth. Now, I've also heard that, number two, this plan, the plan would engender maybe as many as, I heard the original number was 17, but maybe now as many as 20 regional plants that might result in them being hooked up into existing plants. My understanding is, and I was just talking to the chairman about this before we went on camera, probably, I don't know, maybe 70% more, you tell me, of the parish is into private sewage business with Mr. Pertwee, but if we're getting involved in this, we would have these regional plants. And I do agree with the chairman. I would like to know a lot about what the timeline of how that would be, even in a crawl, walk, run strategy. And then, of course, we do own, I understand, correct me if I'm wrong again, 4 or 5 private plants, the parish per se. But if we build these regional plants, we would, of course, have to have land to build them on. Do we have that land? Are we acquiring that land? Do we have a plan to acquire that land? How is all that going to be paid for, and so forth?
Okay, well, first of all, the consolidation concept, there are over 400 individually owned wastewater treatment systems in the parish, permitted by DEQ. So that the concept of consolidation started with, okay, how do we reduce the numbers down by consolidating them? And so the concept was to divide the parish into 20 groups, 20 areas, 20 different areas. And so from that sprung the assumption that, well, we'd have to have 20, plants, regional plants, one in each area. And though since that original concept, it's become evident that we probably would not have to have a plant in all 20 areas. So that's yet to be determined by, the engineering that's yet to happen. And it would, make a lot of sense to minimize, the number of regional plants, and that's the goal at this time.
Okay, and I'm sure Mr. Attorney and others have, so I don't want to monopolize the time here, but and it's just a discussion, but it was mentioned about the revolving account. And I read, I think, in a newspaper about this. This I did not receive from the public or any constituent calling me. $18 million is at stake here to be loaned.
Yes, that's the amount.
And is it correct then that are we in, and I heard Mr. Shriver say that we would, Mr. Dawson say, we might at this point be the goal now, re-engaging the DEQ to make sure it's clear that we do intend to use those monies. So we're still in a situation right now where we would be availing ourselves as a parish to that $18 million loan. And could you tell me maybe as a newcomer again a little bit about how and when that would happen and what would happen thereafter? I mean, I think as the chairman said, that's not a lot of money for a parish-wide system.
Yeah.
And you mentioned 20
Yes.
plants. I can't imagine that each one would cost well over $1 million and so forth, even if we do a lesser number and we crawl, walk, run it, or whatever we do. But maybe we'd want to make a few comments into the record about that as well.
Yeah, okay.
It's okay, I'll address that, Councilman.
All right. Mr. Dawson.
Yeah, the ability to utilize that state revolving fund, to implement sewer treatment and Ascension is important. The approach is, at this point, and you'll hear more about it in the next agenda item, is to engineer a concept that's feasible and that makes sense. From the conceptual standpoint of looking at overall treatment for the whole parish, and then utilizing a smaller concept of a particular region that encompasses and utilizes current investment of sewer, Highway 73 and some of the things on Highway 42. So the $18 million will be used at some point to consolidate either a smaller regional concept that's feasible, and that will get us, in a sense, the parish into the sewer business. So the goal, again, is to make sure that we take a very systematic approach to have a conceptual direction that we're going, and if it's a smaller concept, to utilize the $18 million to initially get us started, it will be part of an overall regional concept in that implementation. So anything that we do in the point of sewer is directed toward a definite plan that will be unfolding in the next weeks before this council, this committee, in the next few weeks.
And a follow-up, will there be any additional grants and or even more loans to augment this money going forward beyond, let's say?
I don't know.
I think you're going to have to, Dan. That's part of what the $18 million, part of what you're looking at because of the overall expenditures of this size of a project. $18 million is, like you alluded to, basically a drop in the bucket, but it gets us going. And we want to make sure that we've got two problems with that $18 million, and the part of what you addressed earlier is, as I've educated myself on this a little bit more as time has gone on, the customers to repay any loans that we get. Now, this is a low-interest loan of, I forget what the percentage is, 0.08, 0.9% interest loan from DEQ. And so the issue that we are working, or we are going to need to work to try to get our hands around with this thing, is that with the private sewer treatment facilities that are out there, the customers that are left, when we do go into doing sewer and getting the customer base that we're going to need in order to do repayment on this, is where the juggling act, I guess, if you will, has been occurring for years, and justifications for getting that there. We've worked with the DEQ folks to secure that money as long as we are continuing to progress forward and keep it available to us, because other folks are wanting it. And so in order for us not to go out and have to get a loan at 4 or 5 or whatever the interest rate may be for that initial outlay. And part of the restrictions that are within that is we cannot use that to purchase other existing sewer facilities. It's got to be spent on new stuff. And so it makes it an interesting dilemma to work with. And as we go through this process and bring you guys up to speed on some of the stuff that I've learned over the last few months and trying to get this next item going. And now that we finally got that going, we'll get everybody else in on those discussions and education and try to put our heads together to come up with the best plan working forward. I'm not sure if that answers your question a little bit more, but.
No, I think that's fine, and I thank both of you gentlemen for your comments as well. Basically, I understand this is a discussion, and I just needed education.
Sure, right.
It's a steep learning curve, but I want to be part of it, and I thank you for your comments.
Mr. President?
Basically, we have 4 systems right now that belong to the parish. 2 of them were basically public systems, that Country Ridge being one, that we had to take over because of failure to pay and failure to maintain the system. And I personally had to go to Dallas, Texas, and meet with the EPA, and I can assure you that's not a pleasant visit. And, we were threatened there at $500,000 a day on fines. So we ended up taking that. We got some grants to fix it. The other is trailer land out on Airline, same type scenario. We had to go in, get a grant for, I think it was about $1 million to do that. And then we have Dara, Harryville. Those are the 2 others. And basically the $18 million that we do have, we don't have to borrow it all at one time. If we find a solution that maybe $7 or $8 million to get in, as you said, to crawl, that's a possibility. But at some point, you won't be able to put any more affluence into Bioman Shack. And I would say that time is the clock is ticking on it. And I would think in the next 3 years, with EPA, the rules have changed somewhat since January, and they're going to continue to change. And there's several of these systems now that are owned by these private individuals that won't be able to meet the new requirements in the near future. So that's the dilemma we're facing as a whole, and doing nothing is not going to be an answer here again. So.
Mr. Dawson?
Yeah, just to give a little more information since we're having a discussion. We on the CDBG grant for the Dow-Hillryville system, that is in the process of being designed now. That's a system that, again, it was a grant from CDBG. The process is going forward to consolidate treatment in that particular area and to look at how it can best benefit the overall encompassing conceptual plan. So that is moving forward. Just wanted to let this committee know that it is positive that we are doing something, for treatment systems, utilizing funding sources that would not be a burden on the taxpayers of Ascension.
And that brings up an interesting point too, Ken, that's kind of a dilemma with sewer in the parish, is that we've got these existing systems out there and we're on the verge of creating some other ones and trying to encompass those into the overall plan so we're not re-spending money or having to do away with what we're currently putting in place today later on down the road, that we'll be able to continue to utilize those facilities. So going about and developing this system and rolling it out is going to be tricky in several instances, and that's one of the things that I would really like to see us work towards, is making sure that we waste as little money as possible in rebuilding or tearing down of structures and systems that we put in place as we come through with the final look of what sewer is going to be for Ascension Parish. Anything else?
I'm fine.
Madam Secretary, show Councilman Kluwat has arrived. Next is agenda item number 5, discussion with GSA and MWH project status. Mr. Dawson.
Mr. Chairman, I think that's something you've been involved with as well as the process of looking at having GSA and MWH to look at an overall comprehensive plan. We kind of talked about that earlier as the need to do so. There seem to be a lot of ideas of what possibly could be a treatment plan for Ascension Parish. I think that Mr. Chairman and you and Parish President and possible Council Chair looked at getting a group, you know, these two engineering companies to try to consolidate all the ideas that were possibly out there and come up with a direction. That's what has been tasked, and I'm glad to say that that's the direction that we headed. And with that, we have Mr. Glenn Shaheen here with us tonight, and also Jeff Sapier that could kind of tell you where we are.
Yeah, and that's we've had all these different plans and stuff submitted to us in the past, and it's enormous as far as the information that's out there for us, and not necessarily understanding it enough to have any of it fit our needs or resolve our issues. So what we talked about doing and working with the administration to try to get something to consolidate that information for us and come up with a plan that can give us, educate us on all those plans and give us the best of everything. And whether we piecemeal or whether we go with one of those particular plans, it's kind of where what we're working towards, is to get the information to us as well as everybody else to start working on what's going to be our answer to the problem. So with that, Mr. Sapier and Mr. Shaheen.
Sure. Thank you very much. Jeff Sapier with MWH. So far to date, we've collected data from the parish, and we've been evaluating that data. We've had one workshop with parish staff to discuss overall concepts and possibly some, well, not possibly, we discussed some financial type options. In other words, in a workshop, you kind of just throw a lot of ideas out there, see what sticks, you know, kind of a brainstorming session, just to see, you know, what has been done in the past and see where we're going to go with this. We continually to meet with the parish. In fact, we had a meeting today, just to update on where we're going, what we're thinking, just to make sure everybody's on the same page, so there's no surprises. And so that's kind of where we're at right now. We're still in the mode of evaluating and throwing things out there to see, you know, where we're going to go with things. Want to add anything to that, Glenn?
Just a couple of comments, Mr. Chairman. As Jeff has described, we've begun the process of bringing together all of the information. As you can well imagine, there have been several studies and efforts through the years, and the most recent one being the facility plan, or the draft of the facility plan that was recently submitted to DEQ as part of your SRF funding requirements. And of course, there's additional work that needs to be done to satisfy that, to secure that loan. But in essence, what we're trying to do is, we're not trying to reinvent the wheel. We're trying to take that information, what information we can legitimately use, and to, one, to refine the facility plan into a facility plan that we can generate as many revenue-generating customers as we possibly can, while at the same time building the basis of a sewer system that will allow the parish to continue to expand that system as opportunities for expansion and consolidation occur. So that's been our goal. And the biggest, as we talked about, there are primarily three issues that you're most interested in, and the people are going to be interested in, and that is what are we proposing to do, what's it going to cost to do that, and what are we going to have to pay to accomplish that in terms of fees? What do the citizens have to pay in terms of fees to make that system available to you? There are several options that we are looking at from a financial perspective. Not here tonight to tell you that we favor one over the other. That's going to be a decision that you, as a utility committee, the parish council will make as to what revenue options you feel are pertinent to allow this system to be implemented.
Any questions? Tommy?
There's a time frame on this, right? I think July 15th is your drop dead date. to have this information?
As I think as Mr. Dawson alluded to, we're a little bit behind, I think, the original projected date, but what our plan is, and we talked about that earlier today, it's in early July, and what our proposal is to hopefully be standing before you at a council meeting in July with a decision, hopefully from a council, as to how to proceed with this program. Now, between now and then, there's going to be another workshop, possibly or two. We've already had one workshop, as Jeff has explained to you. But the next workshop is going to be extremely critical from the standpoint that we'll be able to lay out what our conceptual ideas are, what those costs would be, and what are some of the funding or revenue considerations that we want to propose or want you all to consider. So we think that the next workshop is very critical from that standpoint of being able to understand how all of these mesh together. But Tommy is right, the early part of July, sometime in July, don't know exactly, I thought it was July 11th.
Yeah, but whenever the next Utilities Committee meeting is scheduled for July 10th, that's when we plan on being up here to present some items to the committee on July 10th.
Well, one of the things we've done, or that I've done with this, is trying to be flexible to make sure that we've had some issues like this that we can talk about before we call a meeting. So that date's not necessarily set in stone, so if we got to push it back a couple of days or whatever in order to make sure that we're prepared to move forward, we're willing to do that. So just to make sure we got something.
I don't know if you've mentioned, the next workshop is scheduled for the 14th, tentatively scheduled for July 14th. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
June 14th. And don't know what, we would certainly like to have, certainly like to encourage this entire utility committee, because we've got sunshine laws that we can't, we've got to abide by, but we can have all the utility committee members, and if one or two of you can't make it, we hope that you would assign other council members to sit into that meeting. The more information we can discuss and more dialogue we can have with you all, it makes our job a whole lot easier trying to present a plan that makes sense.
Not a problem. We can, we'll get that information to Ms. Meyer, and we can get that out and to an invite to everybody, and try to get as many people scheduled there as we can. And we'll make sure that we don't have a problem. Yeah. Mr. Dawson?
Yeah, just to kind of talk a little bit about the past workshop. I thought it was very successful. It was one that brought in some expertise from outside. These gentlemen brought in some people that were very familiar with the kind of issues that we had in Ascension Parish. They listened, they brought out some concepts and caused our dialogue to increase by driving down the thought processes of what we had to do. We are aggressively approaching the timeline that we're not just kind of, and you're right, Chairman, that we don't want to rush it to the point that we don't do everything that we need to do, but we also focused on making sure that we have something back in front of this committee as well as the council so we can make a decision. It's a difficult thing to do. I mean, sewer is a difficult thing to do because you don't really know you have a problem until it doesn't work. And the issues in Ascension Parish, or as the President just stated, we have systems that possibly will not meet the new TMDLs that are coming out. So it's something that we have to address, but I think the process and approaches that we're going through right now are sound, they're feasible, and the expertise that these gentlemen are bringing in along with our staff, I think will lead us to a wonderful solution.
I think one of the things, too, that I would like to see us do for the benefit, especially the new members on the committee and the council, is that we get with the DEQ folks and have someone come back. I know we've done that before, but for an educational standpoint of view, make sure that we're all up to speed as to the issues that we're facing and so forth, and from their standpoint, can give us those updates and where we are today and where we're going in the future. I think would be very beneficial at the next meeting if we can arrange that.
Sure.
Any questions or anything? Randy?
On the workshop, we appreciate that, and we'll definitely try to man that up. But are we needing any other types of meetings prior to that? I don't know the timeline on the dates. Special meetings, anything?
We don't envision at this time, Randy, that we'll need any special committee meeting or council meeting if we can meet the timeline of the workshops. We think it's very important that we have as many of you, we've had great participation from the administration. At the last workshop, we were a little light in terms of council representation. Benny was out on vacation. I'm not sure what all was going on. Lots going on at the time, but we think it's important that you have as much background and understanding of what we're trying to do and how it all fits together, because sometimes things don't make sense unless you know the background to support what we're trying to propose.
Thank you.
And we'll try to accommodate you as best we can. I mean, if it needs to be, can't be during the day, it needs to be after hours, we're certainly receptive to that. That's not an issue with us. We know everybody's got jobs and responsibilities during the day. Some of us have responsibilities at night too, but we'll try to accommodate you as best we can. But we do think it's important and want to encourage as much participation from you guys, from the council perspective, so that you have a good understanding of what we're proposing.
I'll coordinate everybody's time frame for that day and see what we can do as far as whether we can do it in the afternoon or early evening. Try to set something up, let you guys know from there, if that's all right with everybody on the committee.
Yep.
Just one comment. I'm not sure if I'm hearing that in Councilman Kluat's comment or not, so I don't want to words into what Randy said, but I did hear, I guess, from Mr. Sapier that the one workshop you guys had, it was a brainstorming mission to throw things out there and see what sticks and so forth. So are we, and then with the other speaker, are we really ready to just sit down and tell this utility committee, here is the plan, and therefore within the next week or so, it's going to go in front of the full parish council to have action made, especially with the president's comment, which is absolutely essential that we advertise all this business and for the public and so forth. I'm not quite certain we don't need more meetings than just that. Now, that's easy for me to say. I'm not gainfully employed except for this position with the parish. Although I'm not looking to meet 10 times, I would love to meet as many times as possible to be sure that we have the absolute optimized plan before we get into meeting each other up at the full council level. Does that make sense?
Can I respond?
Sure.
Councilman Satterley, we certainly accept that. If you want to meet with us, we meet once a week, every week. To go over
Anytime, call
what
me.
our efforts have been from the previous week to make sure that we're heading in the right direction. You're certainly welcome to meet with us. We send a notice through Ken Dawson's office, and anybody who wants to sit in with us during our working sessions once a week, you're welcome to do that.
Right. Sir, it's not my intention to take pot shots, but this is the first utility committee's meeting, and I've been sitting for almost 6 months now and been waiting to be called. I know we've had some scheduled, and I know they've been canceled several times, and I realized if the chairman was on vacation, he's the one that really needs to be there. But I think, as Mr. Kluat said as well, as many of us as possible, especially the newcomers. This is a pretty big expectation for me to just, walk in and say, wow, okay, let's do this.
Understand.
Okay, so call me, I'll be there. Thank you.
And I think, too, what they're referring to is not necessarily a finished plan, but some path forward that we can actually look at and say, yes, that's the path we want to go forward. Because one of the things with this, and as much as we don't want to do, we don't want to throw this out there willy-nilly, but it's going to cost us money to develop this. And so when you get into something like this, this is the beginning of a big, huge process. And so we want to make sure that we're working in the right direction. We're all on the same path with it. And I think that's kind of what Glenn and them was alluding to as far as coming to the council with some kind of path forward with that. Mr. President?
I don't think you're going to have an opportunity to vote on a plan anytime soon. I think what you're basically going to look at is where you're going to start. Bottom line is you're spending about $7 to $8 million on Highway 73 and Highway 42. It would be logical to start there. I think that's going to be the first decision that needs to be made, and then what kind of regional system that you're going to put there. As far as the overall system, you can continue to develop that, but I think in the near future, what's pressing right now is to basically look at those two lift stations that we're putting, one on 42, one on 73, and if everything holds with the money in the budget, 42 will be getting off the ground a lot quicker than most people realize. It could be as early as February. So, we need to be prepared, and I don't think that in a year you're going to be able to come up with a plan for the entire parish. I think you need to start looking at a regional concept at this point and take it from there. And the reason there's any urgency at all is because of the two lift stations. We're going to have to have somewhere to go with that stuff. So, we just have some decisions to make, and I think that's basically, Mr. Sadler, what we need to discuss and try to get off the ground first.
And that kind of leads in very well to our next agenda item, which is update on Highway 73 and Highway 42.
All right,
Mr. Laurie.
73 and 42 both have a sewer element to them. These are state improvement projects, but as they incorporate the existing stormwater, which is in ditches in a lot of places on those two corridors, into subsurface drainage, the parish then is obligated to provide sewer for the outfalls that fall into those ditches. The plans for both of those corridors have looked beyond just that tail line collection and plan for a future for additional capacity for subdivisions in those areas. On 73, which is further along, construction activity has already begun on that corridor, and in the next few weeks, that activity will ramp up significantly. There have been utility relocation issues and all of that have finally been completely worked through. And also there was a little bit of redesign going on the sewer that was originally incorporated into those plans. The contractor that won the bid for that project requested and paid for the redesigned sewer, and those plans have been reviewed and approved by the parish. 42 sewer design plans are complete. There are some minor modifications that are currently being incorporated to accommodate DOTD plan changes, and in regards to that, there's a change order on this week's council meeting to address the costs associated with those plan revisions. But both projects are moving forward. The anticipated completion of the 73 project is September of 2013. And then, as President Martinez said, the 42 project could get underway construction-wise as early as early to mid next year.
Thank you, Ben. And one of the concepts, if you will, things to look at has kind of been alluded to tonight is with the Highway 73 and 42 project is that could be the beginnings of sewer for the parish, and how do we mold that into the beginning phases, the beginning steps, phase one, if you will, of parish-wide sewer type situation. If you take a 60,000 foot elevation shot of Ascension Parish, and what do we see, what do we have, where do we want to begin, and how do you start spreading out? It does this. It helps us in a couple different criterias, and one that it's not helping us, but we're being mandated by the state to do it, so it's kind of kicking us to get it going. But the thing that does help us, as far as from a regional system type situation, is that it is in an area that has a lot of growth in that area, and the customer base is there. Although most of it is with private entities, sewers already, it does give us a platform to start with how we are going to deal with sewer in the rest of the parish. If anyone has any questions about that rest of those projects. Okay. Moving on to item 7, a review of the timeline for SRF $18 million loan. Mr. Dawson, we kind of covered most of that, but I don't know if you got anything else you want to bring up on that topic.
I don't think so, Mr. Chairman. I mean, we covered it, initial discussions. Just to say that we are going to definitely, as I stated before, engage DOTD DEQ to make sure that they understand where we're going and that our intent moving forward. In fact, hopefully there will be a meeting scheduled with them sometime next week, just as an update to show where we are in the process, and just to make sure that they understand that we have a plan and we're moving forward.
Okay. Any further questions of anyone? Committee members? I want to thank everybody for coming out and giving us the information we have. I think it's a good first step in where we are and where we're going, progress forward. There's a lot of things going to be happening now, and hopefully we'll be meeting on a more consistent basis now that this process is really getting moving. We'll have a lot more information to get out to everyone on the committee, the council, as well as the public.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Kluwat to adjourn, second Mr. Sadler. Meeting's adjourned.